Hello everybody and welcome to CaiKeys, and today I am privileged to be driving the E90 3 Series 330D 6-cylinder diesel. Now I have a little bit of a mixed history with BMWs. I've owned an E39 and I wasn't a fan, and I've owned two Rover 75s with the M47R diesel engine, which I liked, but they were very agricultural engines. So let's see how this stacks up. Right, first things first, I've been told that there's a little bit of a knack to turning these things on, and I haven't actually tried it, so... No, that's unlocked. I can't even unlock the car. Right, key in. There was no knack to that at all. It was like any other car.
It was like any other automatic.
It was really... It was easy. Right. Let's try and not plant it into a tree. Bloody hell. So here we are behind the wheel of the BMW E90 330D. Now, I wasn't recording video, but I was recording audio, and that bloody hell you heard was my genuine reaction to me putting my foot down in this for the first time. This thing shifts. There's a little bit of a thing to be said for choosing the right displacement for an engine. Of course, everybody wants a big engine, everyone wants a big old 4-litre V8 or what have you with enough power to rotate the earth the other way. But there comes a time when one needs to make a sensible decision. This vehicle was kindly lent to me by Jack's friend Callum, who has kids. They're 4 years old, and as a result he needs something practical, something economical. But Jack is a young lad and he's not ready to throw in the towel just yet, give up on life and purchase a Vauxhall Zafira. No, he wants something practical enough for the kids, with good power and something that won't break the bank. And the obvious choice is something like a 3-litre diesel. 2-litre diesels typically, yeah, fantastic miles per gallon traditionally. BMW 2-litre diesels. We had one in the Rover 75, which I reviewed a few months ago. It was the BMW M47, which you could find in the E46, which was the previous generation BMW 3 Series. And whilst that was an alright engine, it was reliable, it wasn't particularly refined on account of being a 4-cylinder, but most importantly, power on it was lacking. MPG was approximately 50 or so, but this BMW E90 with the 3-litre BMW diesel, M57, fix that in post, you're still getting a fairly good amount of miles per gallon, approximately 45 or so, but you're also getting 240 odd brake horsepower. Now, bear in mind, to my last review, I'm doing that on the same day, of Jack's Alfa Romeo 159, which had approximately 210 brake horsepower. It felt more than enough, and I must say, this extra 30 brake horsepower, fantastic. I believe this is the first automatic car that I've driven on the channel. DSG, with flappy paddles that don't flappy or paddle anymore. So it's essentially just a traditional 6-speed automatic. You know what, I must say, not bad. As I said in the introduction, I have a little bit of a checkered past with BMW. You see, I've owned two Rover 75s with the 2-litre M47R engine, and one of the things that it suffered from... Oh my God, there's an indicator on this. That's bloody high spec, isn't it? One of the things that the... Wow. One of the things that the M47 really suffered from was its agricultural feel. But this doesn't really seem to have it. I think that's on account of having those extra 2 cylinders. It's pretty well balanced, especially for a diesel. And it feels very well closeted, very let me put it this way, under normal cruising circumstances, you would not believe that this is a diesel vehicle. Sorry, I had this with the Alpha. Let's move these out of the way so that Russian man doesn't complain. I used to own a BMW E39. It was the 525i with the 2.5 litre straight six. Now, I've heard so many people say such fantastic things about the E39. I had to try one. I just happened upon one by chance. So I was walking, we were looking for first cars for my brother, and I walked past a car dealership and saw this E39 sat in the back of a garage, and I had to ask, and I purchased it. And oh no, never meet your heroes, because I'd heard such fantastic things about the E39 and I was so sorely disappointed. Everything felt incredibly tank-like. The styling was wonderful. It had aged very well exterior-wise. It was very imposing, very low, very long, but interior-wise it felt too... what word am I looking for? Too isolated, but not in a particularly luxurious way. Everything felt far too big, bigger than the car itself actually was. As far as dimensions go, it wasn't actually that much bigger than my Peugeot 406 or even my Rover 75, but everything in it just felt... I realise I'm not going to make many friends with this. It just felt disappointing. Interior quality was poor. Everything was going very sticky. It smelt like someone had melted a box of Crayola all over it, and that's just a German car thing. It wasn't it. I felt that the interior quality of the Rover 75, dare I say, was better, and okay, I might be exaggerating. As for the E46, I've heard similar criticisms levelled at that. Let me tell you, as an aside, I understand why BMW drivers don't use indicators. These are weird. They self-center. They're a right hassle to use. It pins you back in the seat, this. Fantastically good. So after the BMW E46, BMW completely changed their design philosophy. They went from that classic styling that BMW had had. It was quite... I'm going to throw out the word authoritarian here. It was quite sternly styled, quite aggressive, quite imposing. And in around 2003, the 7 Series, the Bangle 7 Series came out. One of the most maligned designs in vehicle history. Everybody hated it, and people have only really begun to appreciate it now on account of the existence of the new Beaver front, is all I can describe it as, the new Beaver front BMWs. In my days, I forgot to reel off a few 330D specs, so BMW claimed that this car was good for a 0 to 60 time of approximately 6.7 seconds, and that certainly feels about right. I know there's plenty of faster cars about, but bear in mind I drive a 1 litre Yaris as my daily. The E90 330D tipped the scales at 1,550 kilograms, which was about 35 kilograms heavier than its predecessor, the E46, which isn't particularly light, but it's certainly not a behemoth like the new M5, which falls straight through the scales and straight into the core of the earth with a tremendous curb weight of 2,445 kilograms. The BMW E90 was introduced right at the tail end of 2004, succeeding the E46, and was itself succeeded by the F30, which was produced from October 2011. Sedan was launched first, with the Estate coming to market a few months later. Due to this, the E90 was actually produced until the tail end of 2013, giving it an impressive 9-year lifespan. If you're looking for an E90 330D, there were 2 3-litre 6-cylinder diesels throughout the car's life, the M57 and the slightly newer N57, which I'm in today. General consensus is the N57's the slightly superior engine, although there's been many an argument fought over this. One of the differences between the M57 and the N57 is the M57 can have swirl flap issues, which, if I'm being cheeky, us Rover fanboys can stand proudly and laugh at whilst we cruise by very, very slowly and very, very loudly in our agricultural M47Rs with no swirl flaps. Whilst the M57 in the 330D makes 231 brake horsepower stock, the N57 makes 242 brake horsepower stock. Callum also mentioned that if you're looking to chase power out of the 330D, they respond incredibly well to remaps and very, very well to modifications. With an upgraded turbo and some fettling to the internals, some forum users are pushing 500 brake horsepower from these, which would make it pretty much as powerful as the contemporary E60 M5 with its ludicrous and notoriously problematic 5-litre V10. So in terms of engines, if you were looking for an E90 3 Series back in the day, there were a variety to choose from. If you were looking for petrols, you could be very boring and get it in an engine just as little as a 1.6 litre, naturally aspirated. You could get a 2 litre. Now the 2 litre petrol in these is quite possibly one of the most unreliable engines in the world, anecdotally. I haven't done major amounts of research into this, but speaking purely from personal circumstances, my girlfriend's dad had a E90 3 Series. We rocked up at his house one time and I thought, oh, you've got rid of the Mazda 6 and you've got... oh no. Yeah, he didn't have that for very long because it did crap out. That's the thing with a lot of BMW engines. Their 6-cylinder petrols and diesels tend to be pretty bang on. They're well proven, they're well tested, but every so often BMW will come out with an engine which is essentially a very expensive paperweight, or so complex nobody will work on it. Look at this car's big brother, the 5 Series, E65 Series. The M5 of that with its absolutely ridiculous V10 engine. Apparently fantastic to drive, but no one's entirely sure if it truly is because no one's ever had it to work for more than 2 minutes. Luckily, the straight sixes tend to be pretty decent engines. And as far as problems have gone, Callum's not really had any. He's had a little bit of a gearbox whine, but when it warms up, it's nothing too serious. As I said, the flappy pedals don't flappy or paddle, but who knows what that is. And there's been one or two other things, like one of his wheels decided to explode, and I don't just mean that his tyre had a blowout, I mean I think his alloy cracked. But, you know, one of those things, they weren't stock. The design for this car is 2 decades old. BMW don't really tend to change their design philosophy all that much, and yes, the E90 was facelifted. The facelift was out in 2008, and this is a facelift, which explains why it looks more current. But I must say, these have aged fantastically well. Even inside, these still look absolutely brilliant. Everything seems to have worn very well. There's not really any degradation of the interior. The only thing I can level criticism at is the gummy coating that so many German cars of this era use has started to become sticky, but nothing too bad. Oh, there's no washer fluid. That looked like a rubbish shot of the car going past with the windscreen wipers not really windscreen wiping. Sorry, Ethan. Driving position in comparison to the Alfa Romeo 159 is a little bit lower, these indicators are bloody terrible. It's a little bit lower, it's a little bit more hunkered down. But then that's what you expect because this is a more sport-oriented car. The acceleration on this blows me away. It's fantastic. Just don't keep an eye on that MPG dial because when you put your foot down, it's not good for your sanity. One game I liked to play in my old BMW E39 was, can we get the MPG dial to go above 20? The answer to that was, no, we cannot. It just didn't happen. This game with the BMW iDrive system, it's antiquated. I don't want to spend too long on it, but it's a system which BMW are continuing. There's a horse. I must admit I'm more of a Mercedes chap, but I can appreciate a competent automobile when push comes to shove. And what I must say is that I have been in an E46, though having never driven one. I found it very similar interior-wise to the E39, and the same story goes with the E90 3 Series and the E60 5 Series. They're both broadly comparable cars. Of course, the 5 Series has a few more bells and whistles and is a little bit bulkier, a little bit heavier, a little bit more of a cruiser. So I must say, this generation of BMWs, compared to their older brothers, the E46 and the E39, I feel that there's an awful lot to like. Although, the viewer, I must say, as a car goes, I think I genuinely prefer the Alfa Romeo. Yeah, it's a little bit slower. It sounds glorious in comparison to this. This sounds rather muted, dare I say. It doesn't sound bad. It sounds a hell of a lot better than the old M47 4-cylinders, which sounded like a bad tractor that had just woken up. Today, what today has proven to me, really, where I've driven both cars today, the 159 and the 3 Series today, it's proven that a fairly higher displacement 5 or 6 cylinder diesel can be remarkably smooth, remarkably refined, and I don't know why people refer to it as the devil's fuel. As far as power bands go in diesels, you tend to get a fair bit of grunt further down the range, and I can sort of see why people don't like driving diesels as much, because admittedly you do feel that you can't really push them as far because you're not really rewarded for it. The turbos tend to kick in fairly low, and at the top of that rev band you seem to have lost a fair bit of power, unlike petrols, in which case you typically have to rag them a little bit. Don't really get that. They're a fairly relaxed drive, but for a daily driver, I can see myself getting maybe not a 330D, but the Alfa 159. But this video isn't about the 159. This video is about the 330. Bloody competent. And considering that you can pick these up for not very much money at all, and they're typically fairly bulletproof, I would say you can't really go too far wrong. Goes like the proverbial shit off a shovel, which in English means fast. These just absolutely terrorise me when I'm driving around in my truck. The amount of 330Ds and like M3s and M5s I get overtaken by is astronomical, cutting me up left, right and centre in certain areas of the country. And yes, they're a menace, but it's a car that kind of encourages you to drive it fast, to drive it hard. It never really feels stressed. Visibility's great. The steering, I must say, I haven't brought this up before, but the Alfa Romeo had a similar thing as well. Rather heavy steering, but it feels so sure-footed. I really do quite like a bit of a heavy steering wheel. And although this has the M Sport suspension, which is rather stiff, I mean, body roll there is no body roll. It still softens up bumps rather well. I'm driving over the historic grounds where I lost the GoPro on my Rover 75 video a few months ago, and this is a horrendous bit of road, and the 330D is handling it very well, even with this stiffer suspension. We were driving over pothole after pothole after pothole on the way up here, and it handled it rather well, especially with these big old 17 or 18 inch alloys. BMW know what they're doing. They can make a car which is as suited as a taxi cab in the guise of the 320D, to the cool dad car as the 530D Touring, to the absolutely mental balls to the wall M3. And they can do it well. And they have done it well. I'm very impressed. You can feel the acceleration in your balls.
They give a manly tickle.
Yeah. I rate it. Ugh. It's a BMW. It's a BMW. It'll kill itself eventually. So there you have it, the E90 3 Series 330D. I can see why people really love these cars. They're stunningly competent in every way. Nice interior styling, which has held up fantastically on account of BMW being lazy and not bothering to actually change it until they turned all their cars into beavers on wheels. The fact of the matter is, this is a stunningly competent car. Perhaps the styling isn't as good as the 159, which I previously reviewed, and truth be told, I would rather drive that, Jack. I prefer the 159, but I can see why people really rate these. So Jack's celebrating, doing a little Fortnite default dance there, but Callum, I think it's ace. This makes your balls tingle in a pleasing way. Yes. So thank you very much for watching, and for more ball tingling CaiKeys goodness, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.